Prior to the pandemic, the travel and tourism sector accounted for around a tenth of global economic output. 1 in 10 people also worked in the industry, doing things like flying planes, working in hotels and selling souvenirs. But a new report shows the coronavirus crisis has decimated all parts of the holiday business, costing trillions of dollars globally.
It's more important than ever that travel and tourism is given the support needed so it can help power the economic recovery, which will be instrumental in enabling the world to revive from the effects of the pandemic.
Well, for more on this, let's go to Gloria Guevara. She's the President and CEO of the World Travel and Tourism Council, and she joins us from Surrey in the UK. Thank you so much for joining us, Gloria. Now, your report has found some staggering losses in the tourism industry in 2020. Some $4.5 trillion were lost last year, according to your findings. How did you come to that figure?
Well, for 30 years, we have worked with Oxford Economics and assessed the economic impact of travel and tourism in 185 countries around the world using the satellite account approved by the United Nations, measuring direct, indirect, and induced contributions. So it's everything related to our sector. According to the figures in 2019, travel and tourism contributed 10.4% of the total GDP in the global economy. And according to the data that we just released, as you mentioned, unfortunately, last year, that number came down. It was decreased by 49%, and now it's 5.5% of the total contribution. But that's a methodology that we have used for 30 years.
So where in the world have these losses in tourism been felt the most?
Everywhere. Every region was impacted in a different size and of course, capacity, because some countries depend more on international travel versus domestic, but every single country of the 185 countries around the world were impacted. That's why 62 million jobs are gone. They were lost. And 100 million jobs right now are depending on the schemes that the governments implemented, such as the furlough scheme, the UK, in Europe, and in some countries in Asia. But some regions are impacted greater. Europe was heavily impacted, of course, and Asia, which was the region that was growing the most in the last 5 years, of course, was heavily impacted as well. Americas was the region that was less impacted because domestic play a very important role in those countries.
And we know that the COVID-19 vaccine rollout is taking place across the globe to varying degrees. The US is making some good strides in that department, so is the UK and Europe. So what is your hope for tourism now that this vaccine is being rolled out? When can we expect to see some sort of a positive effect on the tourism industry?
We see a light at the end of the tunnel, and we are forecasting to see the recovery starting sometime in May or after May. And the reason is because the solution is a combination of factors. Yes, the vaccine is going to help, especially because in the sourcing markets, we're seeing a very aggressive rollout. But the vaccine alone is not the only solution, and vaccine should not be a requirement to travel. We also are testing and asking countries to have mobility and international mobility protocols, so that either if you can show, you prove that you have been vaccinated, if not, prove that you have a negative COVID test, that should be fine. And either or, they should be included in a digital pass in conjunction with the protocols that we announced last year. So with the combination of all these factors, it's very important to resume international mobility. But the most important thing here is to provide certainty. For the countries that they are providing and the governments that certainty, that roadmap, and they're announcing when they can have their travelers back, that's when we're seeing the bookings, that's when we're seeing the jobs coming back, and that's when we see the recovery that is going to be faster than the others.
Now, there's been a lot of debate when it comes to the vaccine about this divide between richer and poorer countries. Richer countries who can afford to vaccinate their populations while poorer countries miss out. Are you worried that we might see a similar divide in terms of the tourism industry, that the industry in wealthier countries are going to be far better off than those in developing countries? And in some cases, it's those poorer countries who really rely on the tourism sector.
We need to be very careful. You're raising a very important and good point, but we also need to think about that all the people that they are not subject to the vaccine, all the children, teenagers, pregnant women, they cannot be vaccinated currently, right? So that's what we're emphasizing. We need to just be careful and make sure that we prioritize the vulnerable groups. Regardless of the country, the developed and developing countries both should have the right to protect the vulnerable groups and their citizens. And the vaccination should be available for everyone. And we need to be careful of not discriminating, because if you make the vaccine as a requirement to travel, that means that children cannot travel. That means that developing countries that they don't have access to vaccine cannot travel. That will be a discrimination and totally unfair. So as I say, it's not only the vaccine, a very important component, but also testing, rapid testing before departure is going to be key in conjunction with protocols.
Okay, Gloria Guevara, the CEO and President of the World Travel and Tourism Council, thank you so much for sharing with us your thoughts.